I've had the pleasure of being part of the KOVA initiative since its beginning. I think we decided, what, June 2021, right, Bob? Okay, perfect. What's been great about the KOVA initiative is that it lives and works in the gaps that conventional suicide prevention doesn't. And tonight's a perfect example of that. It enables us to do things that are different, like tonight. Tonight we're going to hear stories from peers of mine, people I respect immensely, who all work in this veterans advocacy realm. We've taken things away from traditional conventions and typical mental health outreach, because unfortunately, as my former outreach partner can attest, most of those events really just add to your business card collection. And no matter how big mine gets, I still have some rookie cards in there too, maybe worth something someday. I also have some pretty sweet letter openers from them. But I'm not saying they're the wrong thing to do. What I'm saying is events like that have been done for years, and have worked to a degree. Social services in southern New Jersey, and New Jersey across the board, have never been as solid as they are now in terms of veteran services. And whether it's Atlantic Care, whether it's VA, whether it's East Orange, Philadelphia VA, or Wilmington VA, or us here in South Jersey, we're all finally working together, one VA together. Again, I'm not here to talk about the VA, fortunately. Even with all that work, though, veterans are still dying by suicide every day. So last year, KOVA initiative, we decided to do things a little differently. We decided to normalize the conversation. We decided that instead of talking about statistics and likelihoods, to make the decided that instead of talking about statistics and likelihoods, we decided to make the conversation as common as talking about the weather is. To make asking for help and telling your story the norm, not the exception. It's the same approach Matt and I took when we were first tasked with building a veteran peer suicide prevention program here in South Jersey, now called the PMCS program. Any vets tell me what PMCS stands for? Come on. Big boy voice.
Preventative maintenance check.
Preventative maintenance checks and services. You're absolutely right. And that is what we did every single week in the Army. Did it for our vehicles, did it for our weapons, all to ensure combat readiness of our equipment. Unfortunately, they really never had us do it for ourselves. And that's the mindset we took into what we're doing now, peer mentoring, camaraderie, and support, PMCS. Veterans in the community here need that kind of help the most. It's not a journey getting out of the military that you can ever make on your own. And every veteran in here knows that fact, knows it without a doubt. It's all about the tribe. It's not about what Matt and I do. It's not about all the conventions and all the other events that happen. It's about the tribe. It's about all of us in this realm, in this room, working together for the common good, to keep our friends from taking their own lives. Tonight, we have a lineup of veterans that I consider members of my own personal tribe and from our very own community, people who I admire for their courage and willingness to fight against the darkness. Tonight, we're going to hear stories of recovery, success, and failure. Knowing some of the presenters that I do, we're also going to probably hear some comedy as well. Bob, Ian, I expect big things, all right? So, without further ado, I want to introduce Matt Jacobs. I guess you're my boss. You're also my friend too, though, but he's my boss.
We can hug it out if you want to, Pat. Thanks, Pat. Thank you guys. Just give a hand for Pat. Just want to. I have the privilege of working with great veterans, great workers, great people like Pat each and every day. You're going to hear from each member of the team that I work with each and every day. Just wanted to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Jacobs. I'm the coordinator for the PMCS program here in South Jersey. And I just want to say thank you, heartfelt thank you to all of you for coming out. It shows how important these topics are and how important our veterans are, not only for ourselves, but for our community and for our country. So just a couple of thoughts I want to share, then we're going to jump into the stars of the night, the folks that we really came to hear from, the folks who have the lived experience that we're going to hear from and learn from tonight. I heard a quote this week which says, "That which you most need to find will be found where you least want to look." And I think what's true for a lot of the veterans that I work with, and a lot of veterans I've gotten to know in my 7 years working at the VA, is for a lot of our veterans, after they leave their military service, whether it was for 2 months, 2 years, or 2 decades, there's a shared missing component to their lives, and that is that camaraderie piece. That is that piece of standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody who has your back and whose back you have. And what I find is that the veterans that I work with who experience suicidality, who experience depression, anxiety, PTSD, and some of those related symptoms, what we find is that a lot of folks are suffering in silence, and a lot of folks are alone with their own thoughts, with their own selves, and oftentimes combating loneliness is one of the keys to combating suicide and suicide prevention. So what I hope you'll walk out of here tonight with is an appreciation, not only for the journey that the folks who are going to speak tonight went through, but also how it may apply to you in your own journey and the veterans that you know and care about. With that being said, I am a member here at Mission Point Church, so I do also want to welcome you and thank you on behalf of the Mission Point family. We are happy and eager to do events like that here at Mission Point. Hopefully you already know the bathrooms are right there by the front entrance, and there is plenty more food. So when we're done, I would invite you to maybe even take some home with you. The format tonight is we're going to hear from one veteran at a time from here forward, and there will be opportunities for questions at the end. I know that our first presenter, who's going to be up here in just a moment, does have to leave right after he presents, but we're happy to have all them. And again, a heartfelt thanks for everybody coming out, and especially to our presenters.
You're wicked smart. So yeah, our first presenter tonight, a U.S. Army veteran, Purple Heart recipient, New Jersey State Certified Peer Specialist, and co-founder of Project Refit. A good friend of mine, Dan Lombard.
Hey, everybody. Thank you guys for having this and having me out here. So I do have to leave right after this. So James and Tanner are here from Project Refit to answer any questions for that, and then Wardell is here to answer any questions for the Staff Sergeant Fox program. You're about to hear about both of them. So I was in the Army Infantry 2013 until the end of 2017. I went to Afghanistan 2013 to 14, and then Africa 14 to 15. Afghanistan's obviously where the majority of it happened. I got blown up twice. The first IED was 200 pounds. I was driving at nighttime, bunch of puddles. I looked at my lieutenant we were talking about how we were the only platoon at that point in the deployment that hadn't hit an IED yet. And as I looked back, the lead vehicle had made its turn onto the main road. And where we were in Afghanistan, there's wadis, which is the river without the water, and that's used as a highway essentially. So there's a bunch of track marks, so I couldn't differentiate which ones were the lead vehicles or not. I picked the wrong tracks, and the back left tire hit the IED. I was in a MAT-V, it's a pretty armored vehicle. Each of the doors has a combat lock on the inside. I did not combat lock mine, and the interpreter did not combat lock his. So when the IED went off, both of those doors on the driver's side flew open, allowing the majority of the blast to go out those doors, which ripped my helmet off. I hit my head on the top of the vehicle, blacked out for a time period under a minute. I woke up and I was on fire from chest, waist down. Trapped in the vehicle. Everybody else had gotten out. My gunner was in that vehicle. They have a gunner harness. The IED was so strong that it ripped the harness, and he landed on the hood, blacked out immediately. There was 100 rounds of 7.62 cooking off in the truck, It was also a Mark 19 vehicle, so it had 640 mics. So that was the big one. I had a 80, 90-pound IED, something like that. No fire, nothing crazy. And we also lost my command sergeant major on that deployment. And for those of you who know what a command sergeant major is, they tend to not go out on missions the way he was. Revered, he was a legend among us. He was Ranger Bat for 22 years. So Afghanistan was 9 months. I came home for 4 months. The unit I was with got disbanded a month after we got back, and we got spread out through the rest of Fort Bliss. So that was a pretty rough time because we saw Gunny, our command sergeant major. He was a Marine for 6 years before the Army, so that's where the Gunny comes from. He was a father to us, and we lost our dad. So it was a very rough time period. Then I went, so I was home for 4 months, and I went to Africa for 7.5. And in 7.5, in that Africa deployment, home life and military life kind of met in a negative way, and that's where I really started noticing I wasn't who I was before I went to Afghanistan. So when I came back from Africa, I started doing therapy, and I had a suicide attempt in 2016. It was the anniversary of when Gunny got shot. And, whole bottle of Crown, the whole 9 yards. I was on FaceTime with my friends and everything, and it was over Gunny. It was the anniversary. So that was like the wake up call, though. I knew even prior to that, I knew there were issues that I had to deal with. I just didn't know how to deal with them. So I was getting medically retired. I got my 90% disability. I knew I was coming back to Jersey. I had therapy at the vet center set up months before I even came home, but there was therapy wasn't scratching the itch that I had. I had far too much shit to deal with or to talk about that an hour of therapy didn't touch, really. So I posted on Facebook saying, I'm coming home. I'm a little different than when you knew me. I'm negative, I'm a little irritable, the typical symptoms. It's not you, it's truly a me thing. I'm working through things, so don't give up, essentially. So James Corbett, the other co-founder of Project Refit, saw that Facebook post, and he reached out to me, and he asked basically what the military does for the situation I was in, and it was a lot of typing, and I'm a person who I need a bare minimum, like a video call. Or a voice call. So the texts were just getting too chunky. So I said, hey, can we video chat? And he was like, of course. And it turned into me venting for 4 hours. What I needed to do in therapy, but with a peer. And I was at a point in my life, combat vet, right? So I believed fully that the only way I'm going to speak and open up about my issues is with another combat vet who's just a little further along than I am. And as many of you know, I mean, especially while you're in, it's not the case. We base ourselves off of our leaders, and my leaders were not, those current leaders were not ones they were not dealing with their issues. They were getting divorces, the whole 9 yards. But talking with somebody who was not, he's a civilian, not a first responder, not a veteran, nothing, having somebody who's willing to listen to me without having to feel like they need to retort, number one, but compare and say, hey, this is my story too. Look how much we're alike. It was just vent it out, get everything out, and then see what happens from there. So with that, we built Project Refit. So Project Refit is a peer-to-peer support for veterans and first responders. So we have Zooms every Monday and Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern. We take veterans and first responders out on retreats, Montana, Colorado, Poconos. Our main purpose is combat isolation. Substance use has its place in suicide and suicidal attempts, but for me, it was isolation. It still is. I still isolate, but I have to have a really, really good support system in order for the isolation to not be abused. And I also, so Pat hooked me up. Pat has seen what we've been doing with Project Refit for the past couple years, and Rowan University got a grant, the Staff Sergeant Fox Suicide Prevention Grant from the VA. And Pat knew that was coming in, so he suggested I apply for it because of my experience. And that honestly was more of a game changer than I realized it was going to be, because this is my first job out of the military, and I got out in 2017. There was always that overwhelming fear that I'm not going to be able to function in a normal job. I'm going to get, whatever the case may be, I'm going to get fired, or I'm just going to quit, whatever it was. And this set me up for success, in all honesty. This was the perfect bridge into what I needed to get better. What I have found is helping other veterans, seeing what I went through, knowing how isolated and alone I felt, even though everybody around me was feeling the same exact way. They just weren't talking about it. And the very last thing I want to leave you with is the retreats, and I want to really emphasize on them. So we do something at the retreats. It doesn't matter how long the retreat is. It could be 2 days, 4 days, a week. Every day there's lighthearted stuff, fly fishing, just hanging out. But the main point of it is the bonfires, the fireside chats we have at night. We go into that with an open mind. There is no judging. We don't care if you didn't go to combat. We don't care if you deployed. If you're somebody who served, you have a place with us and everybody else here, but with our fireside chats, it's a comfortable environment to speak with people who have also been through what you've been through. Yeah, so that's me and Project Refit. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I know it's not easy telling your story. Was this first time for you? No? Good. Well, you did very good. Next we have on deck is we'll call him a newer friend of mine, but he's also been like a secret friend of mine because he provides a service that I haven't experienced until last year for a while, since my dad passed. We have next is where'd he go? Hey, there you are. Founder, right? Founder of Gallant Heart. Gallant Heart is a veteran nonprofit that gets veterans out hunting and fishing. Brian's going to explain a lot more of it, but without further ado, United States Marine Corps veteran, Brian Sheets.
Thanks everybody for being here and listening to me run my mouth for the next few minutes. Like he said, I'm a Marine. I spent just under 14 years in the Marine Corps before being medically retired. The majority of that time I spent as a Marine Scout sniper. I deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, all over the Mediterranean and Africa. At one point in my career, I did a lateral move to the intelligence field, and I did that for the remainder. I've had some encounters with several IEDs throughout my time in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've watched friends and teammates die. I've held them in my arms as it happened. So when I found out that I was going to be medically retired, I had a very, very difficult time with it. I thought I was staying in the Marine Corps and going to continue to do what I did and beyond for many more years. Once I came to grips with that, my next thought was, immediately, I'm not going to be the guy that peaked in the Marine Corps, right? Because, I'm going to toot my own horn here for a minute, but I did a lot of cool shit. I got to have a lot of great experiences. So I wasn't going to be that guy, right? I wasn't going to be the guy that, 30 years from now is walking around with his high school letterman's jacket on. You know what I mean? Well, so I'm sent to Wounded Warrior Battalion. I'm eventually medically retired. So less than a year before that, I'm bouncing around in multiple different countries in a month. I'm checking in with the embassy. I'm talking to the chief of station, the defense attaché, all of these people. I'm running my own intelligence operations. And then, a year later, I'm putting my kids on the bus in the morning, and then I'm going to sit my ass on the couch wondering what I'm doing with my life. Okay? So I had a full-blown identity crisis. Who the fuck am I? What am I doing? What am I worth? And at the time, I thought the answer was nothing. There's no way that I'm going to be the person that I was before. And as well-intentioned as everyone around me was, those in the VA system, therapists, friends, family, The only thing that got through to me, the only thing that I heard was, I'm so sorry for what happened to you. I'm so sorry for your experiences. I'm so sorry for your injuries, which put me into this mindset of being a victim. And I adopted this victim mentality. And that lasted for quite a while. And then one day, I just had to look in the mirror and remind myself, you are a bad motherfucker. Think about all the shit that you've done in the short time of adulthood that you've had. Right? And now let's think about what you're going to do moving forward. So, whatever, maybe foreshadowing, maybe it was in the back of my mind already. I retired in August of 2018. Rewind a year and a half or so, my wife and I, some very good friends of ours, we started what originally was the Wounded Veteran Pheasant Hunt. But we bring 24 combat wounded veterans, to South Jersey every year for this weekend event. So once I, was able to get my shit together, then we expanded that to what is now Gallant Heart, to provide these outdoor experiences for combat wounded, disabled veterans, and we have different programs. So some of them are specifically for combat wounded veterans or disabled veterans. Others are for any veteran that wants to come and to hang out with us. Okay, because what we're saying already here is the common theme is isolation. Right, we isolate without realizing we're doing it. Okay, I know still there are times where, my beautiful wife back here will just look at me and say, hey, where are you? Where are you at? Because I can be in a room like this, I can be in a room with 100 people, and I might as well be the only person sitting there, the only person around. And I know that there are a whole lot of people in this room that feel the same way. Okay, I don't care what your experiences were. Everybody's different. Everybody's affected differently. But, everybody's been there. Okay, so our whole intent, our whole purpose, right, is to pull each other out of that isolation, right, to get engaged again, to start developing relationships, right, to get active and get involved. And on some of our events, it just so happens that there's a little bit of shared hardship, which comes in the form of weather. It's fucking cold. It's snowing. It's raining. You're trudging through the mud. Okay? And it just reminds us who we are, who we were, what we're doing, and what we're still capable of. Okay? Because I feel like that's the other thing that we forget a lot of times too, right? Is what we're capable of. We think about, especially, we look at that laundry list of conditions that the VA says that, we're eligible to receive benefits for, right? And sometimes it's, it can be 10, 15, 20 pages long. And it starts to get in your head, right? I am so fucking broken, right? What good could I possibly do now? I can't do the things that I want to do. I can't do the things that I love. Well, it's fucking bullshit. It's bullshit, okay? My whole lumbar is destroyed. I have no discs left in my lumbar. I got 5 vertebrae fused together in my neck. Okay, I run a 160-acre farm. I've with a very, very incredible team, we host as many events as we can, as much for me as for the veterans that come to our events. I train jiu-jitsu. I work out every day. I do all these things because I refuse to be a fucking victim anymore. Okay? But, the whole point is, you can do the things that you want to do. I've been in that spot where I felt like that I'd peaked physically and mentally and could not continue to do, those things that I loved in life. Okay? And I got past it. And I hope that everyone else can too. So I'll leave you with a request that if you or any other veteran that needs that kind of engagement and just wants to get outside and wants to do something or wants to learn a new skill, then please consider checking out Gallant Heart. We got a bunch of handouts here. Give us a call, and let's do some shit together. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I realized after I got off the stage, I'm like, man, I just called Brian my secret friend, and that sounded way too Marine-ish. What I meant was when I experienced Gallant Heart, so many times in this job, as you start doing it for a while, and 10 years I've been doing it, and I know there are people in this room that have been doing it much longer than that, but you forget to take care of yourself. And then Gallant Heart became that thing for me on the weekends that I could take care of myself with and experience and have a good time and come home and be better. I always just kind of kept it to myself until this past year where my two, I've been calling you minions all day, but my two guys that are working for me, Ian Brady and Ryan Pearson, joined me, and we had an absolute blast. So if you get a chance to experience it, it's second to none. Next speaker is a gentleman I met 9 years ago. It's you. 9 years ago. Still acts the same. Still talks the same. Still is one of my closest friends in this whole world, and I owe a debt to him that I only owe to one other person. Ryan stayed at my house for a week straight after both my parents passed. He was there for me. I was happy that I was there for him when he was going through trouble. And I'm even happier now that we're working together and able to help other veterans. So, without further ado, U.S. Army veteran Ryan Pearson.
Nobody said there would be standing involved, so I'm going to sit. Say it, I dare you. A little bit about myself to start is I joined the Army pretty malnourished, coming from an awful household, joined to escape it. A household where you were told, don't even bother thinking about college because we can't afford it, but not only that, you're too stupid to pass with a better than a C, so what the heck are you even going to go to college for? So the only reason my mom even knew I signed up for the Army is because it was 7 days before my 18th birthday when I signed the paperwork and said I wanted to be gone. My grandparents didn't believe at all that I was going. By the time I had finished basic training and gone to airborne school, I thought I was the toughest motherfucker on the world. And even though I had gotten my butt kicked well enough in basic to prove that I was not. Having gone from being told I was nothing, going into drill sergeants telling me I was nothing, I was like, wait, is this it? Is this is the screaming? This is, okay, I can do it this. Double rations, I'm in. I get to eat all I want, and then they stopped the double rations when I gained enough weight. And that sucked. But after all that time, I had learned to be somebody that people told me I couldn't be. Someone that can accomplish a task in the most ridiculous ways because an officer came up with it. And sorry. None of them were as cool as to fly airplanes, so you're good. I'm sorry, jets. He's compensating a little bit, but that's all right. When I was deployed, I had already volunteered to deploy, so I transferred from Wainwright, Alaska, and went to upstate New York at Fort Drum, where I found out cold was not Alaska. Cold was upstate New York, where it snowed from August until May. But when we deployed, I felt part of the unit, part of something, and excited to actually be doing something that I was trained to do. And at that time, it was only artillery. When we got to Kuwait, they were like, all right, Alpha, we're loading up your howitzers and we're ready to go. And I went, what about Bravo? The howitzers stayed in Kuwait. And then suddenly my idiotic 19-year-old or at 18-year-old brain went, oh, that's why we have infantry and cavalry guys in our unit right now. We spent the entire time playing infantry, kicking in doors, getting blown up. My TC team or squad leader, Sarmodte, and I became known as the Magnets. In the month of March of 2017, we were hit 37 times. That goes from small mortar-type rounds to IEDs to where the hell did the front of the Humvee go? And at that point in my life, it didn't bother me because of the 4 people that were in the truck with me, because we were all there, until my truck got messed up too many times. So then that got brought up to the Camp Victory and all the fun places where they have Taco Bell and all that stuff to get essentially a whole new engine and fixing the motor mounts. When they delivered it back to the battalion fob, we had to come up from our little hole in the middle of the Triangle of Death, which was the actual name, and go get it. I volunteered to do the detail that I knew wasn't a detail. It's whoever volunteers to do the stupid detail gets the stick behind. They went and picked up my truck, and my truck got cut in half by an IED. Killed one of our lieutenants, and from that day forth, I felt completely stupid. It killed the lieutenant, the 2 guys that were from the support battalion, that one was driving, one was the gunner. For the longest time, I knew that was supposed to be me. And it took me a while to understand that it wasn't. Something had happened somewhere for it to line up, and it just didn't go well at all. And when I came home, I had proposed to pull the stupid young soldier thing and married the first hot thing that said, I love you. And you know, we were doing amazing. It was the fun time in our lives. My packet got picked up. So I skipped a part. During that deployment, I was awarded, after finishing my training, I had gone to Sam Houston, started training, and then finished the training in Iraq, and I was awarded my second MOS to be a combat medic. The majority of my deployment, I was either the secondary medic or the primary medic on most missions, and got my combat medic's badge and a combat action badge, which was fancy. I had both. But by the time I had gotten back, I realized that the few times I had gotten hit hard messed with my head and I couldn't focus. And I went from me thinking I was the top shit to, why the fuck am I always in trouble for these stupid things? But my new wife at the time was super excited. I was excited. My packet got picked up to become an officer, going green to gold. And 11 days before I left, because I was having some respiratory issues, they pulled my orders and told me I was staying. And I just walked in. You see, like, the whole MEDAC commander. So you got a lieutenant colonel, you've got a major, you have my battalion commander, and me going, I'm fucked. And they said, I was like, I walked in, I was like, either it's cancer or I fucked up big time. Sorry, I'm dropping the most F-bombs. That's usually just how I am. They told me that I had an autoimmune thing called myasthenia gravis. I was the youngest person on the East Coast to ever be diagnosed with it. That's not a great record I want to hold. And what was happening is my body was producing antibodies, and because there was nothing for it to fight, it was shutting my lungs down, and I was passing out. My PTSD was nowhere near as bad with the combat stuff as it was with waking up next to crash carts, wondering if I died, wondering if I had a future. So they tore that out from under me, and all of a sudden I was what my parents said I was. I was that guy who didn't have a future, who didn't really know what I was doing, and my new in-laws kind of favored that because I didn't go back to work right after I got out. I was waiting for the doctors to tell me I was okay, trying to figure out what was going on. Well, we split because the fun wasn't there anymore. It was, why are you angry all the time? Why can't you focus? You know, I'm tired of hearing my mom say this, tired of hearing her say that. Okay, bye. She also did some extracurricular activities that led to that. But I got a cat 3 days later because I felt I was not responsible enough to get off my butt and walk a dog. That cat saved my life. It gave me a reason every single morning to get off my butt, and boy, did she not shut up until I did. And I think George might have met my cat. But it was really hard for me to do anything until I went back to school. And I was gung-ho. I graduated with my bachelor's in social work, and I was roaring to go for my master's. Things didn't line up. My supervisor for my internship kind of ghosted into Wisconsin somewhere. Never heard from her again. Went to work for nursing homes. I wound up over the Linwood Care Center, not far from here, as the social work director, keeping up, doing what I needed to do to get by, keep them afloat, and then the back pain and the hip pain that I had been suffering for years became so great I couldn't stand up on my own. So the day I quit my job was Wednesday, July 5th, 2017, and 1 a.m., July 6th, my wife's water broke for my son. So I felt useless. I couldn't stand. My wife is strapped. Women, you know, if you've had a C-section, and the husbands too, if you were brave enough to be in the room, you're strapped like this to a table. My wife screamed at the doctor when he asked me if I wanted to stand and help birth my son out, which I've seen things like that before. Why not? She said, "Don't you dare let him stand. He will fall." And it hurt because I knew it was probably going to happen. Period of time went by. Fast forward 3 months. I fell holding my son and broke his arm. CPS is involved. I'm being beaten down even more. Feel useless. 2018 comes by. Wounded Warrior Project called me on my birthday to say, "Happy birthday. We haven't seen you at any events in a long time. How are you?" And I just freaking, first person I was ever honest as hell with. And they had me on a Project Odyssey, which is like what the other gentlemen here do. It's getting you out on a retreat out of your comfort zone in the outdoors. And it was the Chattooga River down in South Carolina where they filmed Deliverance. So yes, there was a banjo and a didgeridoo, but it was November. It was like a month later, I was in my glory with zero pain because I was floating in freezing cold water, and I was enjoying it. But like all events, what do? We got to go home. I roasted in it, and Pat, wherever the hell you went, we reconnected to teach me how to play golf because he knew I was desperate to just get the hell out of the house. And my son is now 6.5 years old. If I say I can't do something, he doesn't argue. If my wife says she can't do something, oh man, is he throwing a fit. Because he's not used to mom being sick. He's not used to when mom sprained her ankle and couldn't do things. He was like, "Mom, I need this. Mom, I need that." And I'm looking at him like, I'm walking, you know. I'm standing in the kitchen. I can get the snack you want. But that was an adjustment. And I got the job I have now with the PMCS program last year. But that was 5.5 years where I felt worthless, dark, down, hated life. I am very shocked that somebody like Matt wasn't talking to me on the phone all the time, because guaranteed if I answered the questions correctly, I would have been sent away. And I know there's a lot of people in here who had that same fear and why you didn't talk about what actually happened. But the things I had gone through weren't the things that were echoing. It was the things I can't do now, not the things that I can do, like what you guys showed me again, that I'm capable a week and a half after I had neck surgery, removing my disc at my C5, C6, I'm out there shooting pheasants. And I almost got as many pheasants as Ian and Pat combined. So I'm just saying, pick up the pace, man. You were doing it a little longer than me. But I'm the guy who always wants to talk about humor, who always wants to joke about things. But Matt picked up on something that, a word I already knew very well, and I catastrophize things very easily. Ian's shaking his head like, no shit. I always think of the worst before I'm capable of thinking of beyond that. And this job is allowing me to see the strengths in others that I have in myself, but also they're gaining these strengths because of our efforts, because of the things that we're doing. And without that, I'd be sitting at home asking Pat when he's going to get online to play Destiny, because I would have had no other choice because he doesn't know how to play anything else. You can't play anything else. But that's me. I've got some quirks and frustrations, but spark up a conversation, because that's who I am now. I don't shut up. Yeah.
All right. Our next presenter, U.S. Army veteran, door gunner. And if New Jersey isn't a small enough world, come to find out, she was the door gunner for a very good friend of mine, Chief Trevor Jenny, who I met literally the day I got out of the military back in 2013. Tori and I also have a shared friend who Matt actually met as well, or knew as well. He and I were on a stage just like this, and a couple months later, he died by suicide. So I don't want to take away from your story, Tori, but if we all please give a round of applause for Tori Fisher.
So I am going to sit. I am going to say fuck. I also have notes. I'm going to try and not use my notes. They teach you in the Army that that's a crutch, but they tell you that a lot of things are crutches that are not. I'm going to try and sit, too, because I'm a little short. So, as Pat said, I served in the United States Army for 13 years, a combination of active duty Army and the National Guard. I deployed to Iraq in 2004 the first time, and then 2009 the second time. That's when I served with Mr. Jenny over there. I was a crew chief. Some people say door gunner, and Mr. Jenny was one of my pilots. We used to call him Captain America because he always does it for America. So I'm not going to focus a whole lot on war stories, and really I'm going to tell you why, because one of the things that I've come to realize over the years is that, the experiences that you have, they're not really as important as the impact those experiences have on you. Because, man, we've all been places, we've all done some things, and I have seen it in the veteran community that we have this really bad fucking habit of going, well, man, I didn't do as much cool shit as you did, or my life wasn't as hard as your life. But the reality is, man, it all impacts us differently, and that's the fucking thing that matters. What matters the most is the after. It's after it gets quiet. It's after, it's all over and we take that uniform off. one story I am going to tell you, just because it's a story of service that always stuck with me, is one of the things that I did as a Black Hawk crew chief when we were overseas. It was called Hero Missions. So a lot of people are familiar with medevac, right? You see that stuff. Everybody knows what a medevac does. They go out there and they rescue people that are hurt and dying. The job that I had, we got called to go pick up the guys that didn't make it. And the one that really sticks out in my head the most was we get called out. And one of our guys has fallen, and I got to go pick him up. So we fly out there, get him loaded into the aircraft on a litter, and I jump back into the aircraft, and I hook up to comms, and I'm getting ready to do our thing, tell the pilots we're cool to go, and I see this guy start approaching the rotor disc. So I tell the pilots, hey man, there's somebody out there, let me jump off, let me jump out there, talk to this guy, see what he needs. So I get out of the aircraft, I approach him, and he has a Kevlar and a vest in his hands. And, hey man, what's up? And he said, hey Sergeant, I was told that nobody's allowed to fly in an Army aircraft without his Kevlar and his vest. This is his. And, what am I going to do? So I take it, thank him, tell him he's right, get in the aircraft, and I strap the vest and the Kevlar in the seat next to me. So the whole time I'm flying, I'm just looking at this guy's Kevlar, his vest with his rank and his name on it, and honestly, and his stiff feet in the back of my aircraft. And that always stuck with me as this level of service and caring about each other that we can never fucking explain to somebody. That in this moment, like, that's what his buddy was thinking about, is like, my buddy needs his Kevlar and his vest. I need to take care of him. So that's always stuck with me. And it's really kind of driven a lot of things that I do in my life now. So fast forward, deployment, I do about 8 years with the Guard. Around 2016 was about the time I got out. So I wear a lot of different hats. Some people know me from I opened a brewery in 2015, and I got pretty well known for that, which quite honestly ended up being, what people don't know is the mask that I wore for a long time, that people didn't know how fucked up my life was. So 2015, I opened this brewery. And around 2016, things started falling apart for me. I'm still in, but I'm having a lot of financial issues. I'm going through a divorce, struggling with the business, although people see the business thriving. But my contract is coming up, and I'm in this place where I don't want to talk to anybody about what's going on with me. I'm falling apart, but I don't want to tell anybody. So instead of dealing with the pressure and dealing with all these things, I got hit with this, like, fuck, I need to breathe. So I got out. My unit actually had been on order someplace else, and I was doing home station because I was taking care of my new business. And I just simply didn't re-enlist. It was like the last few days before my contract. So most people didn't even know that I wasn't re-upping. They came back from training, and I just wasn't there. So, I started definitely doing my own isolation thing. And I look back on it now, and I realize and know that I wasn't a victim of any kind. But in my head, I was at that time. I started thinking to myself, like, man, nobody's calling me. Man, I haven't seen anybody. Man, these guys are just like fucking doing what they do all the time. The whole world is turning. My unit's still doing what they're doing, and here I am, and nobody's calling me. I'm by myself. And then meanwhile, I'm fucking broke. My whole life is like trashed. And I have this brewery, and I've never talked about this ever. So, but I have this brewery that kind of getting me some attention. I'm in the media all the fucking time. I'm on Fox News, I'm in Forbes, I'm in all this shit. So, like, life's supposed to look good for me. The reality is that I was fucking spiraling huge. I was drinking a lot. Like I said, I was broke. And so one day, all this stuff's going on. My car got repoed. I wake up in the morning and I hear these chains hitting my driveway. And I go running outside, and this guy is just fucking taking my car. You know what's in my car? A bunch of my gear that I was supposed to turn in, my fucking TA50. So I don't have any money to get my car out of the impound lot. And I'm getting phone calls from the unit. Hey, like, you haven't turned in all your shit. So that's a whole thing. So now, more shit. Fast forward like a month later. And I get a letter in the mail. And on the letter, there was a stamp, Department of Defense or Department of Veteran and Military Affairs, whatever the fuck it said. I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking it's a check. It's got to be a check for something. And no, I open it. It's a fucking statement of charges for the gear that I didn't turn in. It's a fucking bill. And so that was a moment for me, something that had been bouncing around in my head for a while, something also that I'd never really spoken about. So in those weeks, I had been going through this thing in my head that I'm gonna end it all. Like, I just didn't know when yet, but I had justified in my head a reason. It was going to be my final act as a leader, as an NCO in the Army. I had written a letter, and in my letter, I outlined all of the red flags, all of the things that my life had become from the perspective of the NCO that I was, because I thought to myself about all the times my friends and people we know had taken their lives in the unit, and then all the leadership would always go, well, we didn't see it coming. We don't know why this happened. Meanwhile, we're just sitting through endless fucking PowerPoints and all these different things. So in my head, I'm gonna write this letter, I'm gonna explain it all, it's gonna be my final act of leadership. So that day I get this letter, this fucking bill, that was the moment. I went to my closet and I pulled out the 20 gauge Mossberg that I had for hunting. And I had practiced with a couple times, putting my toe in the trigger guard, and I stuck it in my mouth. And the only reason I didn't pull the trigger is because I thought about my daughter, and I thought about how terrible it would be for her to have to grow up without a mother, and knowing that I had done this thing to myself. So I didn't pull the trigger that day, but I didn't get better either. Pretty much what I did was I ended up trading that bullet for a bottle. I just kept drinking a lot. I was going through a few bottles of bourbon a day at that point. And nobody knew. I am in a brewery. Being drunk in public was totally expected from me. So I just kept hiding behind that. But I was violent. Nobody saw the holes in my walls, the broken glass. I got arrested for assault one night. Just spiraling hard. My wife at the time started telling me that I needed to get help, that I needed some help, and I just kept pretending like I didn't need anything. I had it handled. She was being dramatic. I got this. And so then one night I am hanging out with a very good friend. My friend Rory, I think Pat had mentioned, and we're having a couple beers, and I start talking to him, and I'm really trying to, I'm kind of laying out to him some of the things that have been going on with me and how fucked up my life has gotten, and he looks at me, and he's like, hey, man, I've been there too. You should really talk to my therapist. I think you should get some help. And again, I ignore him. I'm just like, therapy. Weird because I work in mental health now, and years ago I was like, therapy? Yeah, I'm not doing that. So fast forward a couple more weeks, I have another particularly very violent evening. I almost killed my wife. And I call Rory and I go, hey man, I'm gonna talk to your guy. Give me his number, have him reach out to me, like I need some help. So I started going to therapy, but I'll be honest, again, still not fully engaging with it, still not fully recognizing that I got an issue. I'm doing all these fucking things in this community. Like at this point, I think I had started my own nonprofit at that point. I'm running the brewery, I'm fucking supporting all these veteran organizations. I am helping everybody else but myself. I am not looking at myself as being the issue. So, not engaging. I'm going to therapy, but I'm showing up hungover or drunk most of the time. Not doing any type of internal work, just floating through life. Like this is it. I'm just gonna stay drunk all the time and whatever. And say that I'm not an alcoholic, but what I definitely was dumping booze on my shit every single day, and I can't even tell you what my shit was, to be honest. That's just kind of how it just giant fucking haze out there. So, this is going on. And then my life fucking changed. So May 1st, 2020, I wake up. I am still drunk from the night before. COVID's going on, so I have a phone therapy session with my therapist. And I remember I was still pretty much drunk for that while I'm talking to this guy on the phone. And I don't remember much of the conversation, just me saying, maybe I will take a few days off from drinking and see just how things, I'm going to try and take a couple weeks off or something. He's like, yeah, I think it's a good idea. So I get off the phone with him. A couple hours later, I get another phone call. And that phone call is where my whole fucking life changed. And it was a good friend of mine letting me know that Rory had killed himself that night. The guy that fucking saved my life, he was the guy that I called for everything. When I fucked up, he's the guy I called. When I wanted to go out and do fucked up things, he's the guy I called. He was my friend. He was fucking my world, man. And I remember what my first thought was I'm gonna grab a bottle. I'm gonna open a bottle, and this is what I want to do. But then I remembered, one, the conversation that I had with my therapist that morning, just a few hours before. And two, the realization that if I opened a bottle in that moment, that was it. I wasn't coming back. There is a difference in wanting to die and not wanting to live. And in that moment, I realized that I did want to live, that I definitely wanted to live. There were so many conversations that he and I had, and one of them was he'd always fuck with me about, hey, why don't you go back to school? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I'd always tell him I'm too fucking busy. And so what I did was, instead of opening a bottle, the week after he died, I enrolled in school. Started going to school for psychology, working a psychology degree. It was COVID, so I isolated in a good way. I cut myself off from all the people that were kind of pushing me into that party environment and all these different things. I didn't really tell anybody what I was doing. I just stayed focused on me, stayed in the books, started on working on me, going hiking, doing all these different things. I knew that I wanted to make my life better because I needed to become the support that he had been for me. I decided I needed to become that for other people, and I need to get my shit together. So I started going to therapy and actually engaging in therapy. I started journaling. I started talking to my friends and reaching out to people. I started talking to people about things that were going on with me, and they would open up to me about what was going on with them. And for me, that was the upward tick into how I started getting better. I hate the fact that the turning point of my life was my friend's death. I hate that that is the thing that had to wake me up, but something did. So today, now I am the director of Veteran Peer Services for the Mental Health Association. And that's all because of the spiral I went through and losing my friend and all the things that he had done and the inspiration that he gave me to go out and be what I needed for other people. So before I finish up, one of the things that happens with the veteran peer groups or the veteran peer services, I also facilitate peer groups. And a couple of weeks back in the peer groups, one of the guys had asked me, what is the magic pill that keeps us from going into the black hole? And, the reality is that there is no magic pill. And anybody that's been in the black hole, I think you would agree that you never stop going in the black hole. You still step in the hole. You still fall in the hole. There's no magic pill. The difference is that we train for it. As veterans, it's what we've always done is we train for things. You train and you prepare. You prepare for the fight, whatever that might be. And that's what I tell my guys now is, man, you identify your good friends. You identify the things that work for you. You keep your head space in the right space whenever you can. And that's it. We train. And the other thing is just knowing to always reach out, always talk to people, and know that you are absolutely never fucking alone. You are surrounded by amazing people who are going to be there for you as long as you let them know that you need help. That's all I got. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tori. Real quick, show of hands. Veteran and military spouses. Raise your hands. You have to. Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb and say most of us in this room who are veterans or in the military still wouldn't be here without our spouses. So I knew it was important to have one represented here tonight. Fortunately, the kind of new nurse manager at Northfield for the second time. You're a two-time, like a world champ, two-time nurse manager of the Northfield or Atlantic County VA community-based outpatient clinic and U.S. Army veteran spouse, Lisa D'Adamo.
Hello. First, I want to say I am really, really grateful for everybody coming out, sharing their stories. It's great to see kind of people who have made this journey and gotten to what I know it's not a finish line, but to a place where they are comfortable with themselves and they're finding their daily successes. I want to help my husband get there. We're not there yet. I really wanted him to come tonight, and we talked about this and gauged his comfort level, and he's just not there yet. But I wanted to be able to share from my experiences and take the victory where I can get it. I'm a nurse. I happen to work for the VA, and I actually did that because I see from my experience being able to see what happens when veterans aren't able to access care when they're ready to. And I wanted to make sure I could be part of the solution, not just at home, but across all of my veteran family members and those that I know really don't know where to go now after they leave the military. For me, it's been difficult because I have a lot of knowledge and I can be the professional and I can handle things from my professional aspect. And then I go home and none of that works. None of it does, absolutely. So I try to take what I know and offer it to my husband, who's not at all interested in some of the things that I'm offering to him. And I try to share and say, well, you know, I was talking to someone today and this really worked for them, and it's just not there yet. When you all spoke about isolation, and I see it. I'm sorry. He says that he's just antisocial. But I have talked to some of his high school friends. He wasn't antisocial. He was the opposite. He was the social butterfly. And his time in the Army was his community. He was a tank mechanic that could not deploy with his unit because he got injured. And that seemed to be the turning point. And when he got injured and he reclassed to supply chain, and we all like to have a good time with that, because you put a tank mechanic into supply chain, it's hilarious. But it gave him an avenue that when he got out of the Army, he was able to go into his job now. And he sees the limitations that he has, and when I look at them, they're small. They're little things. He's able to hold a job. We're able to communicate. We're a typical married couple. We have good days, we have bad days. There are some days where we don't talk to each other, and that's normal. And I try to explain to him that this is normal. These are all the things, except I'm the one doing all the talking. So it's been about 2 years now that because I was working in the VA system already, I was bringing home the stories of kind of like, oh, well, you know, I saw a really great interaction today. I actually spoke with the veteran today, and I had a great interaction where they're telling me that they were stubborn, they didn't want to talk to anybody, but they talked to this person, they really liked them. So after we were able to get him to talk to anybody, he spoke to them only on the phone, didn't want to do it in person, had a little bit of conversation, and it was meant to be a bridge between talking to this person on the phone and actually going to speak to somebody in person. And that bridge was supposed to be about a month, and he stayed there for about 6 months because he was comfortable. And it was finally in that point that he opened up to me and told me, I mean, we've been together for decades, told me things that he has never spoken before. And it helped me glimpse what he deals with every day. And it helped me stop helping sometimes because my help was interpreted as his helplessness. And to be able to take that and kind of be able to shut off that part of me that wants to fix it all and to let him progress it at his pace. And it was tough for me for tonight. I really wanted him to come here. I wanted him to be among friends, to see that this community exists, and to know that he has people that were in the same spot as him, but he's just not there yet. And so I want to thank you all for being here and giving me the hope that if I just take this journey with him, that I can continue to help him reclaim what I see in so many of you, to be able to get back to what I see him as. So thank you.
We will have to engineer a stop by your house by the PMCS program to pull them out. Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. Next on the list, we have an Army veteran. When he's not stabbing people at Bulldogs, or going to Stockton University, which happens to be where we met. I didn't have to say his name. You already stood up. It could have been anybody, Bob. U.S. Army veteran, Bob Wolf. He's a peer specialist over at Atlantic Care in Atlantic City. Bob is our inside man working behind enemy lines so we can get vets connected to the community. Bob Wolf, everyone.
Fun times. It's just like it's fine. So I joined. I failed out of college. I joined the Army in 2010. My dad was a first sergeant for 27 years. He came back from Iraq. He was gone. He left my freshman year. I came back like 6 months before I graduated. So you can imagine how strict he was as a father. So when I failed out of college, I didn't want to go back home. And I knew from his life story that when he wanted to get the fuck away from home, he joined the Army. So I was like, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to join the Army. They sent me to Korea off the rip. And the cool thing about Korea is they tell you you're going to get duty station of choice because it's a hardship tour. I spent most of it drunk. I got demoted. But they were like, yeah, you get to choose where you're going to go. And they gave me the option. They said, you can go to Fort Campbell. And I said, oh, God, no. Please don't send me to Tennessee. I'm from New Jersey. They're gonna murder me. Because I had gone through basic in Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, and that was awful. And then I was at AIT in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and that was awful too. So I did not want to be in what was in my brain, hick-ass Tennessee. And they said, okay, well, let me get back to you tomorrow. And they got back to me the next day, and they said, well, what about Fort Lewis? So it's right outside Seattle. You know, it's a nice spot. You'll like it. And I said, sign me up, right? I've never been up there. And they're like, well, one thing, you got to waive your dwell time. And I didn't know what the fuck dwell time was. So I was like, well, no, that's fine. Who cares? So I got to my new unit at Lewis and got off leave, and we left for Afghanistan 6 weeks later. I knew 2 people in the battalion that I had gone to basic with. I was a forward observer. They were forward observers, each in different companies, on different FOBs. I did not see them while I was in Afghanistan. I got blown up 5 times. The last one was October 29th, 2012. And I assume you're all from here because you are here. It's the same day Sandy hit. My truck hit a 250-pound IED. It went off directly under the spot that I was standing in. It was my last mission. I would have been on the Chinook off the FOB the next morning at 9 a.m. They had already told us. So I woke up. Head's crushed open, orbital fracture, 3 missing teeth, C4, C5, 6 ribs, shrapnel wounds in both my legs. Lost a third of this quad. And, but I was alive, you know. I was very concerned that I still had a penis because I could not feel. I was strapped to the bed because I'd been having seizures, and I was like numb from the nipples down. So they had this like very pretty nurse stood right next to me, and I'm extremely high on painkillers, and I can't move. I'm in a neck brace, and I'm like, hey, you need to tell me if I still have a dick, because if I don't, like we can just call it, which she did not think was funny. So this is, and I say that because it's when I think back now, the doctors told me that the frontal lobe is where you make all your good choices, and mine's all jacked up now, so I just do shit. So that's like, when looking back, that's the first like, oh yeah, things were different, because I never would have said that to a young female service member. Except if I was intoxicated, maybe. Anyway, so I got back here, and they wanted to keep me at the hospital in D.C. I can't remember what it's called. And I told them they could fuck themselves and to send me back to Fort Lewis, because my boys were coming back on the plane 2 weeks later, and I had to be there when they got off the plane so that they knew I was alive, because knowing I'm alive from like the internet is not the same thing as like seeing me, you know. So they wheeled me out there, you know, in my wheelchair and shit, and that was the day they also told me that I wasn't going back to my old unit, that they were going to keep me in the medical unit. And that was the start of things getting weird for Bob. So that's November. Little after my birthday, in April, I got the command notification that I was going to be medically sent off to pasture. My leg was never going to get better. My head's not going to get better. I'm too much of a liability to go back out and fight. They did offer me a sweet gig. They said, you could stay in, we'll let you stay in, but you're going to be TRADOC at Fort Sill for the next 16 years to finish out your career, which I politely told them I did not want, because I didn't like Fort Sill the last time. That Friday's the first time I tried to take my life. Didn't work. Didn't work. I was too drunk. So from then on, I started going out drinking every night. And I would go to this one bar and I'd drink a whole bottle of Jameson, to the point that the bartenders started giving me half price because they knew I was going to come in and drink a whole bottle and tip $20 at the end of the night, and they were happy. I didn't start no fights usually, and but I would start fights at other bars and stuff, just not that one. And I made it with that until I kept it together until like the end of summer. That's when they started making me go to, they had changed the policy so where you could get your VA disability rating before you got out. And so I started going to the appointments. And I'm still walking with a cane. I'm still going to physical therapy 5 days a week. Nothing's getting better. And now I'm getting this like information from the Army about how bad it is, right? Like how forever it is. So come August, which was the anniversary of the only guy we lost in the unit, I got super tore up one night and once again tried to take my life. It didn't. That time, somebody walked in, stopped me, At that point, it got brought to my chain of command at the medical unit, and they decided what was best for me was to transfer me to the WTU in Fort Dix for the National Guard. But I would get to be home with my family, which was really important to them, that I'd be around my family, because that's going to help. I just did what I did there, I did here. I picked a bar, and that was the bar I went to, and I tipped really well, and nobody ever bothered me from the staff. Like Pat said, 2015, December 15th, I had an altercation with a man while drinking who had some choice racially biased language to use about one of my friends. We got into a fight. I won the fight. I thought it was over. I went inside to pay my tab and go home for the night, as I had done multiple other times. And he was waiting outside my car with a knife. He did not effectively use his knife. I stuck him. I got off him. I sat on the ground Indian style about 15 feet away laughing because I thought it was hilarious that you tried to kill me in a parking lot and now you're bleeding out. And his buddy, standing over me screaming while the cops are coming. The cops, they knew me. I'm from Galloway. I grew up in Galloway. I know the cops in Galloway. He asked me, he's like, well, Bob, what the fuck? I said, well, he tried to kill me. I didn't die in Afghanistan. I'm not dying in fucking parking lot in Smithville. Got kicked out of Stockton. Couldn't get a job. My buddy, Chris Brown, who was a Marine, convinced his girlfriend to hire me. Her family runs a bar in Atlantic City. Convinced him to hire me as a bouncer. Off the books, So I had a job at least a couple months later. And I worked there. They let me drink on the job until 2021. I finally quit because my wife at the time accused me of having an affair. And I was like, well, fuck, if you think I'm doing that, I'll just quit the job, whatever, right? And I got farther into the depression because now I don't have a job. I'm not bringing home any money besides my disability. She's still living the life like we both have jobs, and she was an active alcohol addiction as well. So it's two peas in a pod and a sinking ship. I made it to that summer. We finally split up, and then I finally decided I needed to get sober or something. I needed to do something. I made it, 90 days on my own with no help to the anniversary of me getting blown up, and I went off the rails again. And keep drinking as you do. And I hit December 15th, right? It was the anniversary of me doing, at the time, the dumbest thing I'd done. And decided I was gonna finish it. And I went to, and I'd been talking suicidal stuff for a while. I had been in contact with some of the guys from my unit. I called my old sergeant, Sergeant Grigo. I'd call him every time I got drunk and I was feeling froggy. My machine gunner lives with my brother. They live in an apartment together about 3 blocks from my house. And texted him to let him know what I was going to do. And thankfully, he woke my brother up. My brother came and got me before I figured out that I didn't have bullets, so I was going to stab myself to death, which was very poor planning. But he sat with me for the entire night until the morning, and made me call the VA to make an appointment to go see somebody. You know, and that's where we start Sober Bob. And one of the guys from my platoon, Greg Hicks, decided he wanted to get sober at the same time. We had been talking. He was going through a divorce. I'm going through a divorce. You know, you're doing that. We're in it together, buddy. Backtrack. So Greg Hicks, 6 weeks later, Greg Hicks was dead. He's the 12th guy I served with that took his own life. The guy, Chris Brown, I talked about earlier that got me the job at the bar, took his life 2 weeks ago, bro? 3 weeks now? 3 weeks ago? I don't mean to be such a downer at the end. It's one of those things, like, it's just, you know, keeps happening. And I want to help people, right? That's what I figured out when I got sober, right? Because I feel like if I had gotten sober sooner, maybe I could have got to Greg. I might not have been able to get to the other 11 before him, but I could have got to Greg. We were talking every day, you know? And around a year into sobriety, going to AA and going to the VA and doing all that shit, I found out what peer supporting was. I hadn't even known that existed. I quit my job like 3 weeks later to get into the training because I was like, I have to fucking do this. This is what I have to do. You know, did the training, and I've been working at the hospital in Atlantic City in the ER since June of last year. I do outreach for mental health and substance use, people in crisis, people post-crisis. Since June, I've gotten 8 other veterans that didn't have benefits connected with the VA and into substance treatment programs. One of my very close friends, who I cut off a number of years ago, or not a number of years ago, a little bit after I got sober, because he was still just out there, got sober 9 months ago. He runs a sober living house now. And one day the VA will hire me to help other veterans, which would be cool. But for now, you know, I'm in the ED 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, trying to convince people of what I've found, which is that like Tori said, I don't want to die. I'd much rather be alive, even if I'm miserable sometimes, you know. I'm watching people that I helped to get sober turn their lives around. And that's, at this point, probably everything that's keeping me going. I have other good things in my life now, but it's all branched out from that, you know, at this point, singular decision, which was to get sober and then get into peer work and help other people that I don't want to say like I have the unique ability to help. I don't. There's tons of us that are sober. A third of the guys that I deployed with are now sober because None of us can drink healthily. We can't use drugs healthily. There's nothing against you if you can. I'm happy to hear it. Please enjoy yourself to your heart's content as long as you're safe. You know, it doesn't bother me when people drink. I can still go to a barbecue. Don't bother me none. It just don't work for Bob. You know, when I get that in me, I very quickly become the thing I do not want to see in the world. What I do want to see in the world is people taking care of themselves and the people around them. And that's paramount for me at this point. So, that's it. Nice and sad. Here you go.
Thanks, Bob. I gotta be honest. I never thought I would see Bob alive after the first day we met doing an orientation at Stockton, and I can't tell you how proud I am of you, bud. The turnaround you've made and the work you're doing now, and it's been an honor to work with you. So just give Bob another round of applause. He really likes all the attention. Oh, last and least, I mean not least, but not least, we are joined by a gentleman who I hadn't met until 2 years ago, but yeah. His name is Ian Brady, United States Marine Corps veteran, and actually I met his daughter before I ever met him. His daughter was a student of my mom's. And I knew because she was such an amazing young lady that the person that raised her, the people that raised her, must be amazing as well. So when Ian started working at the VA, I made sure to have him come out to outreaches with us and get involved with us. And since then, we've had a great friendship. And then Matt and I were asked to build the peer program that we built. Ian was like, "Hey, I want to do this." And I'm like, "Come on in. Everyone needs at least one Marine. Like, they speak the same language, you know? It's how it goes." So yes, co-worker, United States Marine Corps veteran, Gunny Ian Brady.
You had to hit me. Am I really bad? Yeah? Okay. It's kind of hard to follow Bob's dick, but I'll do what I can. No? All right. I gotta use the mic. It sucks. So for those of you, again, Pat said my name, Ian Brady. I did 20 years in the United States Marine Corps. We've heard everybody talking in different stages and things like that, and I kind of chose to kind of give a more full picture of Ian and my family and where I was and things like that. So I grew up in an absolutely loving, household. My parents were great. They were hippies. We do like Marine, hippie, like in my family. So they were pretty laid back. And as much as I love my parents, as awesome as they were, the one thing I'd really, in retrospect now, I've seen, they never really pushed me. They were more just like, "Man, it's cool, bro. Just do whatever, man." But like, no one ever pushed me. I had to kind of push myself, and I never really, knew what I was capable of. And then went to college, didn't go away. I was like, I don't want to be here, but I know I kind of have to. And I did 2 years of college, well, like 1.5. I didn't do much that last semester. And I had decided I was going to the Marine Corps. My grandfather had done it, and that's what I'm going to do. Go big or go home. That's what I thought. And I needed to push myself. I needed to see what I was made of. And I found out real quick that I wasn't shit the minute I got to Parris Island. And they broke me down. I'm a kid from New York. I have a really big mouth. I say things I probably shouldn't. I can get away with it now. But at the time, I couldn't. They broke me down, destroyed me, and then started to build me up. They pushed me harder than I thought I was going to be able to do. And I was like, whoa, I can do this. You know, I can do this. And so now I had this confidence. And now I'm just the baddest motherfucker on earth. And I held that mentality for a long time. So I went to my first unit, and I realized really quick, I don't like to listen to people. And I think I have a better way of doing it. And so I just have to pass you up, and then you have to listen to me and do what I say. So that was kind of the mentality I went with, right? Like, just work harder, do better. Then you're in charge. Then you get your own people, and you can do what you want. You can't ultimately do that, but you have more say in what you want to do. So I kind of flew through the ranks. Meritorious PFC, E2, Meritorious E4. Had the plan that, you know what? It wasn't a career. I was going to do 4 years and get out. I was already set up. I had a job. I'd taken tests with FDNY, NYPD. That's where I was going, right? And then I started to realize, like, I'm pretty good. And some of these senior leadership was like, you shouldn't get out. Don't go be a fireman like that. We can go make you a drill instructor. We'll send you straight to Parris Island, and you can go be a drill instructor. And I said, man, if there's something that's going to keep me in the Marine Corps, it's that. I'll go be a drill instructor. Okay, right? So I went to Parris Island. I got there in 2000. There's no wars going on. And I will say, arguably, at the time, the most intense, incredible, crazy, hardcore dudes in the United States Marine Corps were drill instructors there at that time. Because it was taking years for these guys to get orders. I got hooked up and got there in 3 months. I was a sergeant. When I got there, I didn't have a hash mark. I wasn't even in 4 years yet. I was way ahead. I was like the first Crucible Marine to ever go to DI school. So I got there, and I realized real quick, like, I got knocked down a peg real fast. I was like, wow. Most of these guys have been in twice as long as me, and these are some of the baddest dudes, like, in the Marine Corps. But I was like, that's not going to deter me. I'm just going to keep working. And I did. Kept working, busting my butt. Got fortunate enough to work for some incredible Marines that I saw other guys that went to bad teams or bad companies, and they didn't progress as well as I did. I was so fortunate. I had two of these guys that pushed me harder than I ever thought I could be pushed. If you don't know, it's 100 hours a week. It's running around screaming, running, jumping, flipping, doing things, insane stuff. I started that at 180 pounds in the best shape of my life. I got down to 148 pounds as a drill instructor in 3 months. It was insane. It was nuts. We were doing all sorts of dumb stuff, taking Thermodrin, all this other crazy stuff. It was insane. But I loved it, you know. I say it's the best and worst 3 years of my life. So fast forward, leave the drill field. Everything's good. Towards the end, I'm leaving in 2004. We're going to war now. That's all I want to do. That's all I want to do. I want to go to war. But your daughter's got a grade 3 kidney issue, so we're sending you back to the D.C. metro area, the last place in the world I want to be. So I go back there. They stick me in officer candidate school. Again, I'm still moving. I'm a meritorious staff sergeant now. You know, I've picked up E6 in 6 years. Moving forward, I'm killing myself there, doing everything I can, get to about that 10-year mark. Every time I'm trying to get in these deployments, trying in these billets, see if I can, it's just not happening. Bust my butt, and I become a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, or selected. I find out there's this task force from the D.C. metro area. They're taking 55 different MOSs of Marines, everything from logistics, avionics, all this stuff, a couple grunts, something like that. We're making a task force that's going to be an infantry company reinforced. You're going to go take this mission out at this Army FOB on the Iranian border. Let's go. I'm all about it. I go out there. I work my Marines harder than anybody else. I'm pretty much sure we were the best ones out there. At least that's what I thought, or at least people tell me. So we go out there. We're there for a couple months. One particular day, we go to this IED factory that we had located at the mission of going in and just blowing this place apart, just destroying it, leveling it. It's booby-trapped every single place. We're clearing routes in, all sorts of stuff, getting involved in a giant firefight. I'm dismounted, running, and I see a vehicle backing to a place we haven't cleared because they're trying to engage a tower. I'm running to the vehicle. They're backing up. They go right over an IED, and that's about one of the last things I remember from that next 48 hours. So we're able to get them out of the vehicle. We put them on a bird. They're flying out. They're trying to push me on the bird, but Gunny Brady ain't going on the fucking bird. No way. I'm staying here. You can pick the shrapnel out of my legs later. I'm fine. I'm bleeding from my nose. I'm bleeding from my ears, but I'm not stopping. 2 more days there. I don't even remember most of it, but we continue to engage these guys for a couple more days in the area, in the vicinity. And we finished the deployment, you know. I knew there was something wrong, but like a lot of people with TBIs and stuff like that, you're hurt at first, and then like, I'm fine, right? It's all good. I'm gonna be okay. Come home from the deployment, typical kind of stuff, you know, what's that crack in the road? Who is that? Can't stand near people, things like that. But again, I continued to progress. I'm good. Basically did another, I kind of mixed that up, I'm sorry. That was the second deployment when I got blown up. Come back and immediately get orders straight to Japan. I go to Japan, and I didn't even have time to deal with some of the issues. And I get there, and this is the first time that there starts to be chinks in Mr. Incredible's armor. I'm just not right. I am just not, there's something wrong. But I can't admit to anything. That's weakness, you know? And I am not weak. I am not weak. I'm impenetrable. Bullets bounce off me. You know, people shoot me in the head and it ricochets. It happened. But I'm impenetrable. I cannot, and this is weakness. So I push through. I'm having issues. My wife's asking me, hey, dumbass, it's Tuesday, it's 6 p.m. Why have you just consumed a 12-pack of beer on a Tuesday when we're not going anywhere or doing anything? And by the way, you did it yesterday and the day before. I said, okay, all right, I can fake the funk. So I completely slowed down the drinking and just started to deal with more of the issues. But again, I put on a great facade. I'm still here, and I'm doing everything I need to do. I loved Okinawa. I loved Japan. It was great. The family time we had there was incredible. And after that, they said, hey, you're going to San Diego. Awesome, cool. Get to San Diego. Again, things are getting worse, but again, I'm not telling anybody. All right, I'm impenetrable. I'm the baddest dude that ever walked on earth. This is it. There's nobody better. I'm going to suck this up because that's what I have to do. So I get there, and now things are continuing to spiral even worse. Now there's things that are going on, and I'm sabotaging my own career. I'm getting involved in acts of violence that are kind of getting covered up. There was a couple times I didn't even show up to work because I was so freaking drunk, which you can't do when you're on active duty, okay? All right, it's not just a no-call, no-show. It's, you know, typically you go to jail. And by the way, I was a military police officer and corrections officer. So, yeah, it's really not the best thing in the world to do. But it got so bad and continued to get so bad, and I put the face on, and I pushed everyone away. And the one thing about the Marine Corps was doing at the time was we were all about taking care of our sergeants and below. You know, that was the job. We look out for these troops. But I saw it around me to the left and right. If you were a staff NCO or an officer and you said anything, you were labeled as weak, you know, and they did that. So again, I suck it up. So it finally got so bad to the point, the one thing that kind of kept me going, which is weird, was I got really into marksmanship. As far as like Marine Corps division matches, Marine Corps championships, I did a summer with the Marine Corps rifle pistol team. And that was like the one thing that actually calmed me down was when I got to shoot guns. So one particular day in February, I had gotten to the point that I just could not fake it anymore. And I said, this is it, this is the day. So I went to not my armory from a military police, but where I stored my competition pistol. And I would go there at any random time so I could pick it up whenever I wanted. And I said, you know, I'm done. This is it. I'm a failure. I'm probably never going to get promoted again. You know, I was on path to be a sergeant major at 16 years. And here I am now. I'm probably never going to get promoted again because of things that I've done and a little bit of bad luck. So I went in, drew my pistol out, went to my car, looked at my pistol in my hands, and I told myself, my wife's going to be okay. I'm a fucking loser anyway. She doesn't need me anymore. My two children, at the time, my son was 17, and my other daughter was about to turn 13. And then I had a 2-year-old, because that's what deployments do. 2 main deployments, and like that, you come home and you have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old, now you have a baby. But, okay, so I picked the gun up, I put it in my mouth, and I know that pistol better than I know any other weapon system there is. I had worked that thing with, you know, it was down, basically I knew the trigger pull to a T. I knew exactly what to do from competition to take all that slack out of that trigger. And I hit a wall, and from that wall, I can boom, gun goes off. And as I'm putting the gun in my mouth, and as I'm pulling the trigger, I've already written everybody else off. My 2-year-old popped in my head. And every day The only thing I looked forward to was to go home because we lived right across the street from the park, and he would immediately jump in my arms, and he had to go to that playground. And that was the highlight of his day, was the highlight of my day, because Daddy was home. And as I'm pulling the trigger, and it's about to go off, and I don't know how it didn't go off, that picture went in my head, who's going to take Cullen to the park today? And I stopped, and I scared myself so much, I was confident, and I'm still confident, if I had pulled that out and hit my tooth, I had taken so much slack out of that trigger, the gun would have gone off. I got it out of my mouth. I took it to the side. I brought it in. I turned it back in after I'd, kind of straightened myself out. And I got in my car and went to a field, and I called my family readiness officer, who was a friend. She worked, down the office from me. I told her, I didn't tell her that. In fact, prior to tonight, Patrick and my wife are the only people I've ever just told anyone this story. And I had to tell, I realized when Pat told me to do this, that up until 3 weeks ago, I had never told my wife that whole story. What she and what everybody else thought was I just went to that field and took out my phone and called my friend, who, I love her to death, but called my military police officers when I told her I was going to kill myself to come pick me up. So the ambulance and my junior Marines came to pick me up, which was kind of devastating. I went a little past, I forgot one part. The ultimate thing to put me in that car that day with that gun in my mouth was I had been seeking mental health. I'd been telling things, and they had been telling me for 2 years I needed to go to Wounded Warrior Regiment, that I was messed up. Because the only people I was telling was counselors, psychiatrists, things like that. I finally said, after 2 years of them telling me, you need this, you have to do this, they talked to my command, they got all the paperwork ready, and I had a new sergeant major and commanding officer, and they called me in the office, and I was like, this is it, they're going to tell me I'm going to Wounded Warrior, I got to be able to deal with this. And they said, Gunny, you know why you're here? I was like, I think so, sir. And he said, why the fuck would you think you need to go to Wounded Warrior? You have 2 arms and 2 legs. What do you need to go there for? Stop being a bitch and get back to work. And I went, okay. And they said, by the way, we're giving you orders. You're going to go drive an hour every day north to Pendleton for your last 2 years in the Marine Corps. So that was when I decided to go put that pistol in my mouth and do that. I got up to my new, so then on top of all this, everything that's happened, I'm in the hospital, and because there's a million things going on, my wife can't come and get me when it's time for me to get discharged. I didn't tell everything to everybody, but I told the doctors just enough, and enough so that they'd let me go, that I didn't have to stay and get thrown in a padded room or something. So of all people to come pick me up is my 17-year-old son. So my 17-year-old son comes to pick me up, and he's in tears, and he grabbed me. My 17-year-old son's bigger than me, and he was back then, he was like a freaking stud. Grabbed me and threw me against the wall and said, you're such an asshole. When I was 10 years old, you told me I was the man of the house when you went and deployed. And for like 7 months and another 3 months, I really thought that, and I thought I had to be the man of the house, and it put a lot of stress on me, Dad, and it was hard. And you came back, and that was okay. But he's like, you tried to kill yourself, and you wanted to make me the man of the house. I'm sorry. And I'm only 17. And from that point on, I just decided I'm going to live, We talked about the black hole. I've been in the black hole plenty of times since then. But at that point, that's when I said I have to do this for myself. I mean, I didn't even think the Marine Corps was going to help me because they're telling me I can't even go to Wounded Warrior Regiment. So I took it upon myself to learn these things. And I've since then fallen in the black hole, sometimes bad, nothing to bad to the point where I've ever tried to take any action or anything like that. But in learning those tools, things that were putting me in that black hole don't put me there anymore. Learning all these extra tools and like that, having the resources. I ended up retiring. I did 20 years. Came back here due to family and things like that. Worked a couple years in private sector, still having issues. And then COVID happened. They worked me like a dog for a year, and I got laid off, and then it was time to find another job. I was very frustrated with the VA. I don't know why anyone would ever be frustrated with the VA, right? But I was very frustrated with the VA, and I said, in true Gunny Brady, I'm going to go make it a better place, you know? I need a new mission. This is a new chapter of my life, but I need a new mission in my life, and I'm going to make the VA a better place or do what I can. So I came in, and the only job that I could find, that was close because I didn't want to drive to Wilmington. And again, I started to see Pat, and I noticed right from there that what it meant for me to help a veteran. One of the first people I enrolled, this man cried because he was on a fixed income, and being in the VA system now reduced $800 a month in medication bills for him. You know, he went from paying $800 a month to like $35. So this man cried and like gave me a hug and came back with lunch the next day, you know? And I was like, wow, okay, this is awesome. So when this program came around, and Pat didn't even have a chance to like ask me, I was already like, I want to do it, I want to do it, I want to do it. Like even before he had the program up and running, I was like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do this, we can do this, we can do this. And then unfortunately I met Bob, and then unfortunately I met Dan, and all those now. It's just been incredible, and I'm just so happy that I get to work with you, Matt, Pat, and sometimes Ryan. You know, I get to work with you guys every day, and I just absolutely love what we're doing. And then on top of it, I just feel selfish now because every man and woman that's been in this program, you know, I'm like, do they realize they're paying me for this? I mean, like, I'm getting healing, we're helping people, and you're paying me for it, you know? Today we played disc golf. What happened? I got a hole in one today, baby. Hole in one. But it's absolutely been incredible, and thank everyone for sharing. I apologize for the little thing in the middle there. You weirdos are the first people I've ever actually told that to in a group. So, but thank you.
I know we're running a little late. I can't thank our presenters today or people who just decided to have the conversation today. Cannot thank you guys enough for sharing your stories with all of us. I'm absolutely honored to share this new field of battle with you guys, and everything that you do, everything that we continue to do, was built upon the shoulders of those veterans who came before us. I would be remiss if I didn't say this. It's something I always say. Our generation of veterans, if you didn't notice, most of us were post 9/11 veterans tonight, except for Ian. He was in since World War II, right? Yep. Okay. All these VA benefits, all these benefits we have are because of the generations of veterans before us, for the Vietnam veterans, the World War II veterans, the Kosovo, all of them. That's why we have it. They fought that fight, and it's up for us. It's up to us now to take that baton and keep fighting for them and keep fighting for each other. So thank you all so much. We do want to do a Q&A. I know we're running late. If anyone does have any questions, please just let us know.
I just want to close by saying you've probably heard the phrase, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And one of the things I know about the veteran community is that they care in spades. And you may or may not be aware of this, but the semicolon is a universal sign for continuing on after a suicide or after a suicide attempt. So if you see the semicolon, you'll know what that means because there's more to be written. There's more to the story, and life can continue on. So I just want to close by saying that if you are in a bad place or you are struggling in any way, there are people here who would love it if you would talk to them, especially our speakers, and myself included. So we'll have a little bit of time now to do that. I think there's some food left over. So if you want to throw some food in your wife's purse or, throw it in the back of a pickup truck or something, please help yourself to leftover food on the way out. In all seriousness, we probably will end up throwing away some food. So please, by all means, take some food. But thanks again for coming out. That concludes the evening. And just invite you to hang out, have some more coffee, and enjoy. Thank you, guys.